Dick, do you hear the beep, 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 beep? That's coming from Roger.
Good afternoon. This is Roger Erickson, meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Lake Charles, with our update on Hurricane Harvey for 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, August 24th. We have a slideshow that we're going to go through. The opening slide says that we now have a hurricane. That changed earlier today around noontime. Harvey went from tropical storm to hurricane status. It's still strengthening, and we're expecting it to become a major Category 3 hurricane by landfall on the central Texas coast Saturday morning. Now, after landfall, Harvey's going to weaken to a tropical storm by Sunday before it's going to move back offshore next week. But the key point there is in red. It says too early to say how strong it's going to be by landfall next week, so stay tuned. Let's not speculate on the different scenarios that are being passed around out there. Odds are this will be a weaker system than a stronger system for that secondary landfall. And irregardless of that second landfall, the weather impacts is going to be the same for us locally in terms of the rainfall. This is going to be a very dangerous, long-duration, heavy rain event that's going to cause flooding across a good part of our area. The storm totals that we're looking at now have been bumped up. So southeast Texas, we're saying 12 to 20 inches of rain. Southwest Louisiana, 9 to 15 inches of rain. And central and south central Louisiana, 7 to 11 inches of rain. That rain should be starting in earnest on Sunday. There'll be some rain off and on Friday and Saturday, but the heaviest rains will be starting on Sunday and continuing off and on all of next week. The next slide mentions the storm surge, and that messaging is the same as what we've been saying earlier today. We're expecting a 1 to 3 foot storm surge above ground level. That's how deep the water is going to be above the ground level in coastal sections of southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. Further to our east and south central Louisiana, the water is going to be 1 to 2 feet deep. And we'll have a slide in a little while that will specify some of the locations that we're referring to for that. The timing of that storm surge for the highest values we expect to be during the high tide Saturday morning around 6:30 in the morning. But there's another high tide Saturday evening, and I wouldn't be surprised if these surge values stay high all the way through that evening high tide again on Saturday evening. From the wind perspective, the good news is we're still advertising that not being as large of a threat. We're looking at a gust of 25 to 35 miles an hour for coastal sections of southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, starting late Friday night and continuing into Saturday morning. And the tornado threat is still very small for this weekend. The next slide that we're looking at is the current satellite imagery. It's a visible satellite imagery of Harvey down there southeast of Brownsville. The forecast track, like I said, has it moving steadily northwest with a landfall somewhere in the Corpus Christi area, which, by the way, talking with Donovan Landermiller, hurricane expert here in the office, he said we have not had a hurricane landfall there since 1970, so it's a very significant event if it will end up making a landfall in that vicinity. The next picture we're looking at is the forecast track. And so basically you can see the letters indicating H for hurricane, M stands for major hurricane. So you see for 1 p.m. Friday, we're expecting it to be major hurricane. 1 a.m. Saturday, while it's just offshore, major hurricane. And then by 1 p.m. Saturday, it's inland, but it's still labeled as a hurricane before it drops down to a tropical storm by 1 p.m. Sunday, That's indicated by the letter S. The other thing to note on the graphic here, if you look very closely, on the right side of the path there, kind of south of Galveston, there's a letter S. That's the forecast point for 1 p.m. Tuesday. So we have this thing moving back offshore early next week. It's very close to the coastline. Typically, for a system that's going to stay this close to the coastline, you don't expect it to become a major type system. So right now, the Hurricane Center has it as a tropical storm. Now, if it can get further offshore, there's a chance it could develop more than that. But we're still a little bit too far in advance to really get into specifics for where it's going to go for that second landfall, somewhere on the upper coast here in our vicinity, more than likely later on next week. Now, here's a breakdown of the rain totals for the next 3 days. This is the rain totals between now and 7 p.m. Sunday. The majority of this rainfall is going to be occurring during the day and evening on Sunday. So you can see for southeast Texas, we're looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain across southeast Texas. Southwest Louisiana is between 2 and 5 inches of rain. South central Louisiana between 1 to 3 inches of rain, and central Louisiana is down closer to an inch of rain. So the general trend here through Sunday evening is the heaviest rain being closer to where the center of circulation is. So higher values in southeast Texas, lower values as you get up into central Louisiana. Now that changes when we get to the next forecast period, 7 p.m. Sunday through 7 p.m. Tuesday. You know, it's a very large area of at least 5 inches of rain across southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, basically the I-10 corridor from Beaumont to Lake Charles over to Jennings and maybe close to even Crowley down to the coast. That's the 5-inch area, including some 7-inch rain possibilities down in sections of Jefferson County. Otherwise, the remainder of the area is in that 2 to 4 inch rainfall for the Sunday 7 p.m. to Tuesday 7 p.m. time frame. Now, from 7 p.m. Tuesday to 7 p.m. Thursday, this is that timing of when we potentially could be having that system approaching our coastline. So we are having another round of rain here, and you can see we're advertising in general a 3 to 5 inch of rain time forecast for that time frame. Too early to get real specific in terms of exact location. So this is a picture that I would say we have low confidence in exactly where the bullseyes are going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these values actually go up. Other locations may go down in this time frame, depending on where the system ends up making landfall during that secondary landfall. The key point here is, rather than focusing on something 5 days, 6 days down the road, we need to kind of focus on what's coming up in the intermediate period, which is this weekend into the early part of next week, where we're going to have a lot of flooding going on across the area due to all this heavy rain. Now, the other problem is all this rain's not going to have an opportunity to drain out of the area because of the storm surge occurring along the coast. So we got a couple of graphics here to depict the different areas of risk from the storm surge. So the graphics here for southeast Texas, the blue is the outline of 1 foot of storm surge above ground level. The yellow is 1 to 2 feet of water above ground level, and the orange is 3 feet above ground level. So the kind of the hot spots on the map here for storm surge, Sabine Pass, low areas in the Bridge City area, and then along some of the bayous in Jefferson County, Taylor's Bayou, Hillebrand Bayou, are the areas that we will be focusing on for potential from storm surge threats. But like I said, don't forget, besides the storm surge threat, we're talking about rainfall as well. So the timing of this storm surge here, we're talking about starting for peaking, I should say, Saturday morning at the high tide there at 6:38 a.m. The second high tide comes in Saturday evening. But I wouldn't be surprised if these tides stay high through the entire forecast period because of the southerly flow or southeasterly flow across our area. And when the rain starts, like I said, it's kind of a difficult time to drain out of the area. So a combination of the storm surge and the rainfall is going to make for some aggravated flooding across southeast Texas as well as southwest Louisiana. The next slide shows the storm surge predominantly across Cameron Parish, but it does extend into Calcasieu Parish as well. Up here in Calcasieu Parish, the spots that typically you see flooding would be in downtown Lake Charles near the beach area, the yacht club region. There's a couple spots sometimes over near Sulphur that can flood. Bayou Din area, Deatonville, as you go south, southern end of Calcasieu Parish. And then when you get into Cameron Parish, there's lots of spots that you focus on. Kelso Bayou near Hackberry, the water typically comes across Highway 27 in that vicinity, so Hackberry potentially is going to get cut off for long duration here, depending on the rainfall and the storm surge problems that are going on in Cameron Parish this weekend into next week. And you can see for values closer to the coast, you can see the orange, the 3-foot storm surge down there near Holly Beach. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some deeper values also in downtown Cameron, as well as over towards Creo, Rutherford Beach, Grand Chenier near Mermentau River. Those are the spots that we're kind of focusing on here. Once again, the high tide on Saturday is at 6:25 a.m., and this is the timing of when we expect to see the highest storm surge values, but I would expect it to stay rather high continuing through the weekend due to the combination of the rainfall and the strong southerly flow moving across the region. Now, off to our east, this is what it looks like for lower Acadiana or the south central Louisiana area. We're going a little bit lower value. So the focus areas here, Pecan Island, Forked Island, Intercoastal City, those are the spots in Vermilion Parish. Delcombe is along the Iberia-Vermilion line. That's a spot that always has water backing up the canal from the Vermilion Bay area into their vicinity. Also, the Port of Iberia, that's a spot that you got to remember the water can back up very quickly into that area as well. And then the other spots down close to the coast, the large community at Sycamore Point, Burns Point, as well in St. Mary Parish. Now, the timing of the tide is a little bit different over there. The high tide Saturday morning is earlier, around 5:55 a.m. But again, I expect it to continue not only from that morning high tide, but to continue again into the evening high tide Saturday as well. The wind perspective, we're looking at 25 to 35 mile wind gusts along the coastal areas of southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana starting Friday night and continuing into Saturday. That's due to the fact of that's the timing of when the storm's going to be making landfall. We'll be updating this through the weekend to see if we have a longer duration period of stronger winds that potentially could last into Sunday as well. We'll give an update on the Sunday wind forecast later on tomorrow morning when we do our next update at 10:30 in the morning. Finally, the tornado potential is on the low side at this stage of the game for both Friday and Saturday. Depending on where this thing ends up moving later on next week, there could be a secondary threat for tornadoes as well. So our summary sheet is a review of what we mentioned earlier. We're expecting Harvey to be a Category 3 at landfall Saturday morning on the central Texas coast, give or take the Corpus Christi area. However, Harvey is going to weaken to a tropical storm by Sunday and then go back out in the Gulf of Mexico early next week. And at this stage, the track forecast looks like it's coming towards the upper Texas or southwest Louisiana coastline sometime in the middle of next week. But at this stage of the game, the Hurricane Center's forecast goes out through Tuesday. It doesn't go out through Wednesday or Thursday. That's the window of when we probably will see a scenario for a second landfall in our region. We'll see exactly how strong that scenario is. Tomorrow we'll get a little bit better feel for it, and then Saturday a much better feel for that. We're talking about this secondary landfall still being almost a week down the road, so there's time to worry on that. In the meantime, really, we need to be worrying about the heavy rainfall that we're going to be getting in the meantime, starting especially Sunday, continuing through much of next week. Big numbers in southeast Texas, 12 to 20 inches of rain there. Southwest Louisiana, 9 to 15 inches. Central and south central Louisiana, 7 to 11 inches. The storm surge values, 1 to 3 feet above ground level in coastal areas of southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, 1 to 2 feet in south central Louisiana. The big surge will be probably during the high tide Saturday morning, but it could continue into the high tide Saturday evening as well, and we'll have to watch to see what it does beyond that. Finally, the winds in the 25 to 35 mile range for the coastal sections of southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana Friday night into Saturday morning, and the tornado threat's still small for the weekend. So that's it from here at the National Weather Service Lake Charles. Our next briefing will be Friday at 10:30 a.m. Also, I'd like to mention Donald Jones, our social media guru here, will be doing a Facebook Live presentation at 6:30 this evening. Does anyone have any weather questions for us?
It's us. Okay, we're gonna click off on the weather briefing from Roger, and go ahead and do a summary here. Can everyone hear? Okay. Okay, as you can see, this forecast is only getting more complicated. Right now, closer. How's this? How about this? That's better. Okay. Anyway, the forecast has just gotten more complicated as we've gone by. It doesn't look like it's going to be getting any less complicated. I'll ask Andy to talk about that in a minute. But a couple of issues I want to remind you all about. We have a weekend coming up. It's more difficult to get in touch with people. The good news is it looks like the major threat is going to be pushed back a little bit, maybe till Sunday. But if this current forecast bears out, tropical storm comes back this way, we're only going to have more storm surge, more rain, etc. So if you have issues, we need to know about those now. Don't wait, because we've got one more work day in this week, and we need to try to get that taken care of. So like I said, if you have any, you can discuss it with us now, or if you think about it later, make sure you let us know about it from a planning standpoint. I'm going to let Andy discuss the weather a little.
Okay, thanks, Dick. You know, the main things I wanted to emphasize, especially in the near term, we're talking through probably Saturday, maybe even into Sunday as well, is the heavy rain threat. That's probably the first thing we're going to probably need to emphasize. And as Roger mentioned, you know, some of the areas that are a little susceptible to storm surge, the I-10 beach, you know, some of the other susceptible areas around the parish, that combined with heavy rainfall is I think going to be fairly likely, at least starting this weekend and continuing into next week. So that's just something to keep in mind there. Now, regarding what we talked about, the potential secondary landfall, one thing to keep in mind, there's so much uncertainty regarding the position of this system, especially when we talk about after landfall. Keep in mind the average error out to 5 days, and if you recall, it was pretty much moving more northeast. The average error in 5 days is over 100 miles. So the chances of that position could go one way or the other. So I wouldn't really focus so much on the position of the low. I think the main thing to note is the fact that we are going to have some very significant rainfall, 9 to 15 inches, locally higher in potentially if this system develops more of these bands. Everyone who's come to the OEP here this afternoon probably ran into the heavy, maybe a lot of people ran into the heavy rain, bursts of rain. That's the type of rainfall you're going to see. And it does pose some urban drainage issues. So that's just something to keep in mind as, you know, as we head into next week, is the fact that we're going to be seeing these bursts of heavy rain. It's not going to probably rain all the time, but we're going to be seeing these constant, I believe, heavy rainfall, and telling us exactly when and where, you know, this 9 to 15 is going to happen Monday. We just can't do that right now. We're going to have to see how this system sets up as we head into early next week. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Anyone think of any other operational issues we need to discuss? At this time, we have a special guest with us, Congressman Clay Higgins. Congressman, if you'd like to come forward and make a few comments.
Thank you, sir.
Can you squeeze through there?
I still can squeeze through, maybe not next year. I came to listen and observe and carefully consider the latest updates. I did not come here to speak, but let me just, since I'm in front of you, let me just tell you that our congressional offices have an emergency protocol, and we're fully operational. We're available for you. We're going to put out messaging that will touch probably 250,000 citizens. We have a powerful messaging system, so I wanted to make sure that the messaging that we're developing right now was based upon the latest and most accurate data. So that's why I'm here in this room tonight. We are certainly facing a great deal of rain, and with the storm surge pushing back from the Gulf, the water has nowhere to go. We're looking at flooding, and we can be prayerful. Sister, I'm glad you're here. We have citizenry that are accustomed to dealing with this, but that never makes it easier. We come together as a community, we prepare, we respond, and then we deal with the post-storm operations of getting ourselves stood back up from whatever damage was incurred. Just please know that my office is available now 24/7, and our own emergency protocol has gone into effect. And thank you very much, sir, for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you, Congressman. We don't want to take up any more of anyone's time than is necessary, but we encourage you to come back. We'll be doing this at 10:30 and 4:30 tomorrow again. I'm not sure what the weekend schedule. Where'd Andy go? Did we set a weekend schedule yet, Andy?
Not yet. We originally were thinking if the system was going to be stuck in Texas, we probably would do emails, but I think we'll probably do one webinar. I don't think there's a need to do two over the weekend, and we'll have more information tomorrow morning on that.
Thanks. We'll let y'all know. Just keep an eye on your email. Or any other information we get, we'll be sending that out as well. So with that, if no one has anything else, we'll call this meeting adjourned.